All right, welcome back. I'm a little out of breath because we were just doing push-ups. If you are watching online and you want some exercise, you should pause the YouTube, go do some push-ups and some crunches because it's good for you, and you'll be happy you did. All right, so we're going to continue. Oh, I forgot to get the thing out of my office. I will get it, but it talks exactly what Joe was talking about. There's a book that I love by Bill Hybels called Axioms of Leadership. And it's an amazing, amazing book. And it talks about the tunnel of chaos. The book is broken up into different sections of leadership principles. But there's a whole section that is like chapters 23, 24, 25. They're shorter chapters, 2 or 3 pages. And it talks about having uncomfortable conversations and just burrowing through the tunnel of chaos. And almost every single time I've had to work through those tough conversations or really talk about something, it's so much better. Is that rarely does it actually melt down. It's almost always God will use it for good. So if you're not, like, be honest, put your hand up if you are a non-confrontational person. Let's see. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Yeah. Every single person. So nobody here is wanting to go for confrontation. But I've now learned, like my sister would say 12, 14 years ago, she's like, man, you really avoid contact or conflict big time. Yeah, contact, but conflict. And to the point to where she saw in me, she's like, this is a detriment. Like, you need to be leaning in and you're being passive aggressive in this area. I love that my sister's very close. We can be very abrupt, like very upfront. And she would be too aggressive. Like, people would be like, hey, tone it down a little bit. Like, give it to me softly. You're breaking me here. So she's found a way of being softer. I've had to learn through having some of those conversations, whether it be with a person that I'm leading, a conversation with just a good friend, conversation with leadership up, that I think back on some of these ones that they were not easy to have, but there's always been great fruit that came from them. And I'm really grateful I did. So I love that you said that, Joe. I'll still remember, hopefully on the next break, that to grab that out of there, but just to remember that. And that's yet another book. I love books. Anybody love to read books? I often will read 15, 20 books a year, but I'll do Audible. Sometimes it's more, sometimes it's less, depending on how many podcasts I'm listening to. But that's a great, great one. It's not to be afraid of it. The law of intuition. So leaders evaluate everything with a leadership bias. And this is the idea of that leaders see things that others don't. Is you need to have that perception and those eyes to pick up on things that not everybody else sees all the time. His little sentence here is, how does Steve Jobs keep reinventing Apple computers and taking it to the next level? The answer could be found in the law of intuition. Is that Steve could perceive what the world wanted before they even knew they wanted it. He created a demand for something that we didn't know with an iPod, with an iWatch, with an iPad, with an iPhone, with all of the different things he's done. And going back into the 80s that he saw, it's like, it can be better than a Commodore 64. Like, let's have Lisa or this Apple II or whatever it is that he brought and changed the whole world. So having that intuition is important, but the balance of that is that you need to know when to act and when not to act on it. Like, I can be very hasty and I try to slow down. Is whatever that rhyme is, haste makes waste is one thing. The other one that I love is measure twice, cut once. Is that was not my personality. When I was, 6 years ago, Pastor Dan told me, and I told you guys this, is like, if you focused, you could really do something, because I'm running 3 businesses and working a full-time job and working a job at the church, and it was crazy. And even just these last, especially 9 months or so, when I'm wearing kind of 3 or 4 different hats, there could be like a full-time job each. It's hard to keep track, but I just have to slow down. I try to not respond to important text messages while I'm doing this, walking down the hallway. Like, I've done it, and I'm like, oh, I should not have sent that. Like, first off, Siri put a wrong word in there, and it either doesn't make sense or it seems crude. Secondly, I can be insensitive to people. And so over this last month, I've told my wife, I said, I've done the most of this that I've probably ever done, is I've typed out a message and it felt very satisfying, and I deleted the whole thing. And it's like I mentioned it to you guys on week 1, I think, but even just this last week, there's a couple of times I almost sent someone a text this week, and it could have upset them. And I even did this. I typed it out, and I was checking on something like a good leader would do, and it wasn't out of my realm of influence and my authority to do it, but I wanted to check on something. And I was going to send it, and I was like, let me just wait and see. And I gave some breathing room, and I was going to send it, and I checked it again, and I let it breathe some more. And right before I sent it, the thing happened. And I was like, I didn't have to send it. And now there's potentially no hurt there. And I literally just let it simmer a little bit. And that goes a long ways, because that could have then caused just a rift between us that I have to work through. And so slow down. I need that bad. And just let things happen some. That's the law of intuition. The law of magnetism. Who you are is who you attract. This one cuts both ways. This is a great principle when it works to your advantage. It is a sucky principle when you realize, oh man, I'm attracting a bunch of me's. Like, that's not what I want. And so you really want to be aware of that, because it makes a big difference. So it says, how did the Confederate Army, unstaffed and unequipped, stand up so long to the powerful Union Army? The Confederates had better generals. Why did they have better generals? The law of magnetism makes it clear. And this can be so true. I learned this at our Vieira campus. Is we would have, I was surrounded a lot in kids ministry 6 years ago by a lot of the young people, which isn't bad. We had a very strong intern program for our campus size of 250 people, and we had one service. We would have 35, 40 interns, a lot of young people, and almost everybody helping in kids ministry were under 18. And that's good, but Pastor Matt's like, Christian, you need some engineers that are volunteering. You need nurses and teachers. You need some people who are upper management at the hospital. Like, let's work on that. And what can you do to change to attract those folks? You don't want to have just teenagers that can handle hyperactive or moving around quick or like blowing up, well, coming in a room and just like, like that has a place and it can work for teenagers. But in order to be able to keep high capacity leaders, you need to lead well and then influence them and bring it in. So it marked me well of thinking about, in order to keep these people, they need to have some clear structure. It can't be winging it. You got to have something that they can really wrap their arms around and say, I can take this and duplicate it and run with it. Or I'm going to have these things. And the negative side is, if I've got people on my team that are really challenged, I got to remember I'm probably the one that influenced them to be there. Like, I'm drawing them to myself. And you got to be mindful of that. We had talked earlier about mentoring. And when you have mentors, be careful what you're training them to do. Is we know the verse Philippians 4:8 is whatever is good, true, pure, noble, praiseworthy. Think on these things. You guys know that verse? Come on, show me you're paying attention. But then Paul says this, that which you've seen me do this also. And so it's so important that he follows that verse, like that which you've seen in me, copy me, follow what I'm doing, live this life like I do. And so you want to make sure that you're setting that example that people are going to want to follow and that you're duplicating yourself in a good way. Is I've had to correct that before. And I've apologized to people that I've led to say, I see some stinking thinking or some negativity there, and that's me. Like, I can see where I influenced you in that thing, and we've got to get that uprooted. Like, it was broken in me, and now you've inherited that. Let's get that fixed, and we've been able to fix it. So that's something that just takes some self-awareness. The law of connection. So leaders touch a heart before they ask for a hand. As a new leader, John knew that the most influential person in the organization could torpedo his leadership. So what did he do? He reached out using the law of connection. Is that it's important that people know that you care about them. And this is simple as, before you ask someone to serve on your team, Brandon Doherty at Vieira Campus says, invite them to the barbecue. Don't invite them to come over and help you move. Be like, hey, come do some life with me. let's go have fun. Let's break bread together or go eat or grab coffee, or like, let me actually get to know your story and know who you are and not just try to invite you. And something I've been saying a lot at East Coast recently is you don't stay connected to people by sending them a planning center invite. Like, anybody on here get planning center invites? Like, when you're serving on the team, you're going to just be requested to be on the team, and that's okay. It's a weekly email that says, hey, Sherry, you're in charge of the decor team this week, and be there at 8 a.m., and these people are serving with you, and there it is. It's an assignment, and that's okay. But if that's the only contact you ever got, you would definitely feel disconnected. Is that it's important is a principle we use at Viera, and it's very good, is that we try once a month to have a leader meeting where it is very little business, but it's a lot of connection. We're eating a good meal together. We're laughing and connecting. We're doing icebreaker games. We're going to laugh and have fun, and we'll share vision, but we're not breaking out the PowerPoint and going through something that someone can read on their own. It's way more about, hey, this is how we care about people better. This is how we can love on people. This is how you can build your team up. Here's gift cards you can give to your team to show them that you love them. And you do stuff like that, and it reinvigorates you. I knew for our TNT leadership, for what I'm in charge of, and I'm transitioning to Whitney Branham. I didn't say this in the first session, but June 6th, so today's the 20th. June 6th, we're doing the official transition to Whitney, where we'll be handing over to her and to Lane, and I'll be handing it over. I got distracted by saying that. I forgot what I was going to say. Is that I knew that we needed to have a leadership meeting like this. And I could, as a leader, I could perceive it. I got COVID in March. And because of that, I was out for 2 weeks. And it felt so dry. Like, for me, it was 3 weeks that I was at home base. It's like 19 days because of the way that my kids got it, and then my wife got it, and then I got it. And it's like, man, am I ever going to get out of this purgatory? Like, this is nuts. And so 2 weeks, and I could tell, I immediately came back and started planning and telling my team, guys, we need to do a party. Like, I feel disconnected from you. We can't have the only time we hang out is when we're working together. Because youth ministry and a lot of things, you're working hard. Like for Viera, we're setting up a church and taking it down, and you're exhausted, and you're praying with teenagers, and you're pouring your life out. It's not the same as hanging out. And so starting in March, I'm like, we need a party. Let's do a party. And it was so hard because of Freedom Retreat and a marriage conference and this and that and boom, and we tried dates and it didn't work, and we finally got to do it last night. And our group hung out from like 6:30 to, did you stay super late? Some people left at like 11.
David, Isaac, and Emily.
Yeah, stayed till like 11 o'clock, like hanging in the hot tub. And it was like cool, like volleyball, hot tub, great food, and just like, I need this. Like, I'm not going to talk about ministry. I want to just hear how you're doing. I'm talking about every show I've been watching that I enjoy, and what's a good show you want to watch, and like what's going on with life. And that is so valuable just for the health of things, that people know I care about you, not just, hey, can you show up and stack some shares? So that's really important. Any questions on that? I don't want to just ramble on. I love when you guys interact. Cool. Law of connection. The law of inner circle. A leader's potential is determined by those closest to him. Lance Armstrong is hailed as the greatest cyclist who ever lived. People credit his toughness. They credit his brutal training. What they miss is the law of the inner circle. Now we got to be careful using any principles. Yeah, we got to be careful of using principles of a book that, when Lance Armstrong, before he was dethroned and pulled down. But the idea of inner circle, or let's look at Jesus. He does it great. We already talked about it. He had his 3 that went up on the mount with him and saw, Moses appear and saw like God speaking to Jesus. And then he had his 12, and then he had a bigger group. But having those that are really close is, John Maxwell teaches this principle, is it's the 80-20. It sounds weird, but you pour 80% of your effort into your top 20% of people. Is that you're not trying to spread yourself thin all the time. I can't be all things to all people. And it's unfortunate, and people will get hurt. Get ready to protect your heart from getting hurt. There's people that want to pull on me and have my time sometimes. And I just know, as a younger pastor, I wanted to give my time to everybody. And any person that happened to get my number, I'm going to go to coffee with you, and I'm going to go to lunch with you, and I'm going to help you through your crisis. But what I've learned in 20 years of being around ministry is there's some people that will literally just eat your lunch and pop the bag. Like, I've learned to see it. Absolutely. And that's what they do. And guess what? They go from leader to leader to leader. They're like a vampire. Is they just will drain you. And that sounds brutal, but I can see it and I can hear it in the language. Is I had someone say to me, and if you hear this, God bless you. I don't know if you can tell it's you. Is they're like, they started the conversation. I've been trying to call Pastor Matt and he's not getting back to me. Now, this is a person who's not connected to Pastor Matt. They don't have a relationship. They're not in the church. Like, they maybe got a phone number off the website and they're like trying to get time. And Pastor Matt operates in this principle well. He has people that he's pouring into and he's got people, but he has a pastoral team of 12 of us that are pouring in. And then we have small group leaders that are pouring in. And then we've got other leaders that are doing it. So immediately I'm like, okay, noted. And then this person went on to call me that same day. I said, hey, let's talk tomorrow because I'm running a youth ministry tonight and Sundays are a 14-hour day. I don't have a lot of time today, wow, but I'll talk to you tomorrow. Let's talk. Called me 6 times that day. And I just said, voicemail. Like, I'm preaching at church and my phone's ringing again. Voicemail. I'm like, I could see this thing coming. And I'm like, I can't do this. I'm not. And there was later communications like, you need to help me. And I'm like, I will help you. But honestly, in this scenario, I was like, I already encouraged, and it was encouraged. We have incredible opportunities like, hey, we've got some amazing leaders that celebrate recovery that I know in this particular situation can be very beneficial because I know the background and they're all in. Like they're there and they want to help and they're going to help a lot. I'll sit down with you, but we're going to need to do it in a reasonable way.
It's a sign of respect too. Like they shouldn't be calling you as much.
6 times in a row. On a day when I said I'm running youth ministry, I'm even texting, hey, I can't talk. I'm preaching at youth church right now. Like, yeah. Love you. 3 more calls. Wow. And it's like, and there was not a fire.
You said I'm preaching.
I said, I'm at youth church. I'm about to go preach. And so that's a part of it. And listen, my heart goes out. And Tyler, we've even had a conversation about this before. I don't want someone shipwrecked on the side of the road, literally overdosing from heroin or in a car accident and not be able to reach me. I'm accessible. But I could already perceive in my spirit in the first conversation a little bit what was happening. And I was right. There was no crisis. I called him later. Oh, I didn't mean to call you that many times. I was like, well, it looked like you did because it was 6 times. Like, and so there was no fire. I will go to someone's house at 3 a.m. if it's needed, but I want to have some relationship and context. And if it's something that we can deal with in a normal time, and it's not always like the house is burning down and everything I say is a fire, then I want to work through that.
And it seems like if you point them towards a better direction, like you were mentioning earlier, there's some people who are specialized.
Absolutely. Yeah. And that's where you guys, that's great. I love it, Pablo, is that I pointed this one, Celebrate Recovery. They're geared towards that. And if they're already someone who has been through addiction and understand that, they're qualified, they're actually more geared to be 24/7, 365, or there are programs that can help with that and to do it. Like, you just know this. I see that hand. I'm going to get to you. I'm going to have you say this right now. And I feel weird making you say it, but for real, Pastor Dan, Pastor Matt, Pastor Marvin will be so happy is you're going to hear me say it first so you're not blindly copying me. But I want you to say, I can't be all things to all people because you're going to create a codependency that will be a failure on both parts. That is a recipe for disaster, is if you are someone's savior and if you're trying to always meet their need. People get addicted to that. And that's a real problem. They're like, well, I have to. And what about your kids? And what about your wife when you're on that 7th emergency phone call and you have to be tending to everybody else's problems and your kids hate the ministry and they don't want anything to do with you? Like, I'm a victim of that. The ministry always came first before my family. And my family blew up and we went through a divorce. And every sibling, I'm the baby of 4, hated ministry. and didn't want anything to do. Like, we didn't just say we didn't like church. We would say we don't like church followed by about 10 explicitives because we witnessed this firsthand. And that's not always the case, but I'm not going to necessarily make you repeat after me, but I kind of want to make you say it. Is you can't be everything to everybody.
Everything to
Yeah, thank you. But like, just know it. Like, that's a huge leadership principle because you literally will end up in a ditch on one side of the road or the other. Now, you also can't be calloused. As the Bible talks about, we have to be hospitable. Not just thinking that we might be entertaining angels, but we're called to be, Jesus said, when you gave a cup of cold water to the least of these, you did it to me. When you clothed these ones, when you took care of them, when you were close to the brokenhearted, when you care for those that no one else cares for. We have to care for the orphans and the widows. And you do that, but I honestly feel like God can give you wisdom on where and how to do that and have the right system. I hope you didn't forget your question, Tyler.
So, like, I wanted to know where the line was with somebody being a life sucker, because, like, I guess that's like, shorthand term for him is a life sucker, right? So, because like a scenario I can see when I go active duty as a chaplain assistant is like somebody comes to the end of themselves with like drinking and sleeping around and stuff, and then they come to like potentially near the chaplain, and they might need a lot at first
Yeah.
because they're at rock bottom, but like like that time you need to give them a lot.
I think
But
so.
then
And I
once
think you keep going. I'm
like,
sorry.
all right, you're being a leech.
Yeah, it's hard. And I think that you really need to be led because I've had times where I've poured in. I've had people that if I had to count the hours I've spent with them, because I would either run with them or cycle them, I've poured in 50, 60, 70, 80 hours into people. That's no exaggeration. Over the course of 2 years, I'm not calloused. Like, and this is over 5, 6, 7 years, and I'll still reach. But one thing that I do, and this is important, is that I'm like, hey, is there a change? Or are you taking steps forward? Or are you doing anything different? Or are you, as the Bible says, a dog returning to their vomit and not making any change? And maybe that they really do need help, but there could be a clinical professional for that. There could be a program for that. There could be something that's beyond them literally just like, I need to rehearse my problems again and for the 10th time. And they're never actually going to God. Like, that's a good question. Did you pray about this? Like, what did God say to you about this? Or are you literally just needing to rehearse this for the 30th time? I don't know if that helps. A chaplain assistant and a chaplain, like, you're going to need to be all in. And if you're a single dude, like, you can do it, but you don't want to set yourself up to always be that because you'll feel like you're trying to be that thing for them. I think it's really coaching and giving them principles and helping them to be able to really go to a savior and being able to move in the right direction. Joe, I saw your hand.
No, that's exactly what I was gonna tell Tyler, but yeah, and as a chaplain assistant or an NCO, whatever, you can't be all things to all people, and there's only so much and so much you can do that those resources, like if they have a substance abuse problem, there's only so far you can take them, and then, hey, we have subject matter experts
That's
that
it.
deal with substance abuse. We
Yeah.
have those that, hey, this might be more severe, where maybe it's a
Oh, yeah.
psychiatric
Oh, yeah, for
issue.
sure. They're
You
dealing
might
with
need to get the medics
PTSD and
involved.
stuff that they need some real clinical
Yeah.
help that
Yeah.
specialize in that.
But yeah, if you don't set boundaries, very easily it will turn into a
Yeah.
codependency.
For sure. Having boundaries that are there that they respect. And when people do,
Yeah.
like, I'll lay my life down for someone, but I do, unfortunately, maybe for some people, is I'm gonna like kind of read the situation and see. And I've learned for my own sake because I can say this with bonus share. I saw your hand, is that I am not going to. I don't want to say this arrogantly. I'm going to do everything in my power to not burn out in ministry. Like, I want to say that with the most confidence. I'm a man of faith. Like, I'm going to say this with the utmost confidence that I'm going to do everything I can to love my wife passionately, stay 100% faithful to her, honor and love my kids, and have boundaries in ministry that allow me to be here for as long as I want to be. And so that's my goal. And that means I'm going to disappoint people. Like, it's guaranteed. is that people will get disappointed. And that's a part of leadership is not everybody's going to be able to sit down for lunch with Pastor Matt and Pastor Jessica. Like we used to grab lunch all the time because it was a different season in his life. He doesn't go to lunch anymore because it's just how he is. And Craig Groeschel said this. I saw your hand, Joe. I'm going to get back to you. Don't forget your question. Is that I love this. Please go listen to Craig Groeschel Leadership Podcast. Is he said, you got to be willing to let go of things you said you would never let go of. So he said, as a young pastor, church of 200 people, he's made this statement out of his mouth. I will never say no to someone for lunch as a pastor. I will always sit down with someone. And he goes, he's in the recording, he's like, I haven't been to lunch with someone in 15 years. He goes, I have a staff of 900. Like, I'm preaching in incredible ways. Like, we're doing huge things. He's in charge of so much stuff that he's like, I don't even hardly take lunch. I don't even decide my lunch. My administrator knows this is what I'm going to eat basically every day of the week. And they bring me a little thing and I eat a grilled chicken while I'm working. Like, he goes, you got to be willing to let go of what you said. And so there was a time in my life where I said, I will never, silly statements, turn down an engagement to preach because I got fire in my bones and I'm going to preach no matter whether it's a full gospel businessman meeting at Ryan's buffet with 10 people, which I preached at like 25 of those, or invited to some church, like some huge thing. Like, I'm never going to say no. I'll always say yes. Well, I've said no a lot of times because I'm like, no, I've just been out for 12 nights in a row for some church function. I appreciate it, but it's more valuable for me to be home watching a movie with my kids. Like, that's holier than me going and preaching another night. Someone else should do it. Pablo should be preaching. Like, so I'm blocking someone else's opportunity because I made some stupid commitment that I'm held on to and I won't let go. So be willing to let go of things because they're going to change. Like, I've had to go back, and it's not that you're being dishonorable. It's just, it's good to have strong convictions, but know that, okay, seasons are different. They're not going to always be what you think. Joe, do you remember your question? Sorry, it's
Yeah,
been
I
so
have a
long.
question. I was just gonna add that you gotta remember that you're a son first,
Mm-hmm.
right? So you're a son or daughter first, because I think we can, you can put that to the side for a second. Oh, I'm a minister, right? So now I'm a minister, so now I gotta minister,
Yeah.
minister, and you forgot about, okay, whoa, wait a minute, right? It's like you forgot about your vertical relationship.
Yep.
Now I'm a son first, and I'm a husband, as you just mentioned.
Huge.
I'm a husband and I'm a father, and you gotta have all those boundaries in place. So it's not
Yeah.
just like one thing. It's kind of like layers
Yep.
of son, and then boundaries, and husband and father, all these things that you have to keep in front of you,
Yeah.
so that you know how to say yes and no.
Yeah. It's
Yes.
massive.
Yeah, it is. And
Keeping the priorities there.
yeah.
I love it. I heard Creflo Dollar preach years ago, and he was talking about 1 Corinthians 13. Though I give my body to be burned, without love, it's nothing. And you think about like a martyr burning themselves, but he's like, giving your body to be burned out. Like, if you're doing it without love, like, what about the ones that are most important to you? And that's not a witness that I'm willing to have. And I love that Pastor Dan has set that example, is his kids came first. And I've seen him do it with
Yeah.
our pastoral staff so many times that he's like, hey, you need to go take a week off and be with your wife and your kids. And he'll send someone home like, hey, this is not even vacation time. Just go get healthy and get whole. And is really, really big about making sure that people's families are first. And that's where we've taken pride at East Coast, is that for 30 years in Pastor Dan's leadership, not Pastor Matt, we've not had any pastors that have gone through a divorce. That's huge. That's a massive, massive deal for 30 years. Like, that is not common, but it's because there's a principle that's led from the top down. Is Pastor Matt has said this, and he's not afraid for you to hear it. He goes, I will burn this place to the ground before I destroy my family. He's like, it's not happening. So get ready to get disappointed. Like, my family's, I'm going to go watch Hudson play soccer, and I'm going to make sure that Reagan and Adeline are loved and that they know that they're a priority over someone else's crisis. Like, but I'm going to have someone that will reach out to you, and we have systems in place, but I can't be all things. So yeah.
There's like I don't know exactly where it is, but there's a verse that talks about if a deacon doesn't know how to manage his own household,
Yep.
how will he be able to manage the house of
Yeah.
God? And, it shows great character that he's willing to do that for his family. That means he's much more willing to do things for us too,
Yeah,
in the sense of a leader.
for sure. Yeah, that's a big point of it. You don't just think about managing it of like taking care of keeping it cleanly or cleanly and like organized, but it's like, do your kids love you? And do they love the church? Like, there's a lot to be said for that. I may or may have not told you guys this before because I blend some classes together in my memory. But whenever you're looking to plant a church with ARC, which ARC is what we're a part of, they've planted 900 churches over the last 20 years, is they used to only interview the pastor, whether it's a male or a female, and they would sit down and talk to them. And they quickly learned in year one, we will never interview a single spouse because if they're not unified, this thing's going to just be a disaster. So a lot of times, if it's the man who's coming in and saying, God gave me a burden to preach and to be able to pastor, and this is what we're called to do, they're like, all right, we hear what you're saying. Leave the room. Wife, please come in here. We're going to talk to you, independent of him, and see what's really happening. Like, are you guys healthy? Do you have a good sex life? Or is it broken? Or that, like you say that, but that's super important. You don't got a good sex life, your marriage is doomed to fail. Like, that is critical for any good stability. Like, that should be an important question to ask. Otherwise, why not? Where else is he looking and what else is going on?
Right.
And so, do the kids love the church? Are the kids bitter and angry? Are they not wanting to come to church because they already hate it? And now he's going to go plant a church and literally it's going to be in his living room and people are going to be at his house every single night. And like, that's a big part of it. And that's a part of my testimony is I had felt like I had to plant a church and that is out of my heart. I think I've told you guys this in this last month. Did I tell you this?
Yeah.
So yeah, I won't belabor it, but Anne-Marie begged me to say, babe, please don't do this. Like, I got a baby in my belly, and this is not God. This is you wanting to preach. Like, that's not right. And I've fixed all that brokenness and stuff that was just like crazy ambition that was not God centered in there. But that's so important. So we'll keep going here. The law of empowerment. Only secure leaders give power to others. Henry Ford is considered an icon of American business for revolutionizing the automobile industry. So what caused him to stumble so badly that his son feared Ford Motor Company will go out of business? He was held captive by the law of empowerment. And you have to be secure to be able to give it away. Joe and I were talking about it with Michelle on Sunday this is a scary percentage, but if they can do it 60% as good as you, then empower them to do it. As long as they have potential for growth. And 60%, that's really low for someone who's a perfectionist and had a baby like Joe. I'm sorry, that's my reminder to do push-ups. We already did some. Joe birthed this business from the beginning and, brought it up. And it's like, it's hard to give it away to somebody. I'd love for you to share. You might have shared a little bit, but some of that of like maybe the law of the lid and the law of empowerment of what you were sharing. You go with, you want to or you don't?
I don't mind. Yeah. I was just trying to recall what I said.
Yeah. Talking about who you were hiring and bringing in to be able to be a part of the business.
What were we talking about specifically on Sunday? Yeah, I was just sharing with Christian that, so we have a business that we started in 1998, and my business partner and I, and we literally just worked ourselves, I wasn't with the Lord then, I wasn't saved, but looking back on it, you see how God's hand was there, and He opened up all the doors for us to put us in position. So always give credit to Him, even though I wasn't saved and doing it right. But so because we birthed it and we worked hard, it was ours. We built it with our own hands. We took care of it. You have that sense of ownership, and no one can do it like you can because that's why it's your business. You're trying to do it better than your competition. And so I told Christian that I would specifically, if someone came in, and let's say if they're older than me, and let's just say this guy, he had a great resume. He was older than I was. I was a young guy. He was older. He had years of experience. I would not hire him. He was probably the better candidate for the job because I felt threatened that he would take something away, or he could take the business over, or he could start up his own business here, or he wouldn't take direction from me because I didn't know how to, lead him very well or whatever. But I was an insecure leader, if you will, or owner, really. I wasn't really leading anything. I was actually more of a manager of my own company and insecure. And so you're not hiring the right people. You're hiring. I told Christian, we would always hire people that were underneath of us so that we could kind of control them. Right? So that, and I hate to say that and admit that, but that's just.
It's powerful for you to
not
share
trying
because it's
control them in a
revealing.
bad way, but just like, you need to do it this way because this is the way that we do it. And we were really open to, I would say that we're open, but at the end of the day, you're really not. If you're hiring and letting people go because they're not doing it your way, then you're not really an open person.
Right.
And you can only say that after you realize that, because in the process, say, oh yeah, I'm open, bring your ideas, but we didn't take any of them.
Yeah.
So, anyway, I was just showing Christian, like, you're never gonna, we would never, there's a ceiling to businesses, and I'm sure it applies to ministry as well, as Christian's gonna say, that you can't get past when you don't hire people that know more than you do. I mean, I finally had to learn that, like, okay, why can't I hire somebody that knows how to do this better than me?
Yeah.
Why is that? And so I'm there now, praise God. But we've been with this 22 years, and it probably took 20 years to get to that place. So we're like, okay, maybe we can actually hire. We're going to hire somebody right now, and so I'm like, oh my gosh, I gotta go through this whole process again. So I'm like, wow, okay, so taking a leadership class.
Yeah.
What is it going to look like to go and hire somebody at this point? We haven't hired anybody in probably 5 years, or no, it's been 3 years. So we have a position at have a high turnover rate. So I'm like, okay, God, so what, help me identify.
Yeah.
Obviously, we want your guy for the job, but let's do it different this time.
That's
Because,
cool.
as I just said, it's probably been in the past 2 years that I just got this. So I haven't hired anybody in 3 years. So this would be like, I'm almost a little nervous. This would be like new.
Yeah. Test bed of like
Yeah.
this new system.
Yeah.
That's cool. Yeah, Sherry.
But it's wonderful when you do find that person that knows and has the knowledge that you have, but you also have the trust.
Yeah.
That you can, because when you own your own business, you are there all the time. You are there. If you're not there, you're buying or you're bidding or whatever. So you need to find that person that you can trust. So you can take a little time off and enjoy your family
sure.
and your kids and stuff.
Come on.
And that's where you gotta have that trust.
Yeah.
And like you said, if you ask God, God will give you the right person, but
That's cool.
absolutely.
Do you still have yours? You had your hand raised a little while ago, Pablo.
So kind of, it's a little bit of the opposite, like not someone overqualified, but actually underqualified, about 60%, like you were saying.
Yeah.
And I was realizing that I'm teaching about 3 new people maintenance engineering,
Yeah.
and it's interesting seeing how much I've known without realizing it.
Yeah.
Giving them opportunity to learn what I've learned.
Yeah.
And it's nice seeing that you can empower someone by teaching them something and then
Yeah.
trusting that they have enough capability to fulfill what they need to do.
That's cool.
And I'm grateful that the Lord, He gives us patience, because that's a quality that I've already told them about Jesus, but not in a way where it's like preaching, more of the sense of like there's patience in God, and they would experience that because
Yeah.
they would ask me over and over again the same thing,
Yeah.
and I'll answer calmly and peacefully, and they come back in a different light,
Yeah.
and it's really a powerful thing being able to empower someone else and
Yep.
show them that they're greater than they think they are.
For sure. And you learn a lot when you do that. Like I've been through this class, but then teaching it, you learn new things. And any skill, anything you do, and it's a part of the thing that I'm gonna remember to get off my wall during this next break, is you need to know it first, and then you need to show them, then they're going to do it, and then they're going to train someone else while you watch it. So like it's by showing someone else that you really refine the process, because you don't want to train them on all your terrible practices too. Like as a pilot, this is my dad's problem, is my dad's got 8,000 hours, but he never got a CFI. So certified flight instructor, he just was a pilot and he developed a lot of bad habits. And he went back after the fact to try to become an instructor. And they're like, hey, that works for you. And in the field, it's okay as a bush pilot, but you don't need to train that principle. Like that can be very dangerous. You do need to teach them the way to do it by the book. It's okay that you have these other workarounds, but it's better that you actually do it the correct way every single time. And so it's important in that training duplicate process. And it's messy. It's okay. You get better at it. The law of the picture. So people do what people see. Easy Company withstood the German advance at the Battle of the Bulge and dashed Hitler's last hopes for stopping the Allies' advance. They were able to do it because their leaders embraced the law of the picture. And I think about this with kids is that they say that kids are taught a lot more by what's caught than what's told. So you can tell a kid, you can tell a person something all day, but they're going to watch what you're doing. It's like, I hear what you're saying, but I see what you're doing. And so that good example is important. And we've already talked about this principle when we talked about owning the place, picking up the trash. Like, I was talking to a leader today that wants to be involved with the building project a little bit. And they've got business background and finance and some building. And they were like, oh, I was out at Gateway Church in Dallas and I saw this stuff. And in our church, we need to do this. And he goes, oh, I didn't mean to say our church. I said, what do you mean our church? Like, that is your church. Like, he's like, well, I'm not on staff. I was like, I don't give a rip. Like, that's your church. That's your building. Like, own it like it's yours. Like, okay, my church. In my church, I want to have this, this, and this. I'm like, that's good. Like, treat it like that. And it's just a principle that you have. But when people want to see that, they're going to watch you and take good ownership. So figure out what's another example that you guys can give me of ways that you can give a good picture and that people are going to watch your example. Someone give me one. The law of the picture.
Well, you know what? You can live a totally different life from your real persona.
Yeah.
Because of the media today, and you see them flaming out too. Like, well, I don't mention any names.
Yeah. There's plenty of them.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's real true. It's a fake.
Because
It's a double life. It's literally a highlight reel. It's got all the filters. It doesn't show like, and I joke about that is we've taken some family pictures that I could show you. I don't have my laptop here, but they look like, oh my gosh, that's the best looking family picture. But I know in some of them, especially when the kids were younger, I wanted to strangle the kids. Like, I love my kids and my kids genuinely love me. Like, I can say that with confidence. We have a great friendship. Anybody who knows my kids know that, like, they do love their dad, but I will about want to throw them in the ocean for some of these family pictures because they lose their mind. Like, they decide to just, one year we're trying to get a picture at Legoland, and my oldest son refuses to take the picture because we had to have him step on the grass, and it had a thing like no picnic sign. And he's like, I will not break the law. I was like, it's not the law. It's the grass. I had 3 employees come by that told him, son, go stand in the grass for your family. He's like, I'm not going to do it. I'm like literally almost picked him up and threw him in it. And you look at the picture, it looks epic. It's this great picture with this huge oak tree, and it's so nice. And I'm like, I'm ready to leave that kid here and let him walk home. Like, but smiles, and so you can fake it, but it's not always the real thing. So it's important. Did anybody else have their hand raised, Chris?
I mean, another thing, best example is being a leader at TUT.
Yeah.
It's like literally one of the best.
Yeah.
Going to church and then them reaching you for help outside the church.
Yeah, it's
or just
great.
meeting up with you, hanging out with you outside, because, you know, it's more than just being a friend and out of church.
Yeah.
You are, you know, you're a guide to them
Yeah.
in a way.
Yeah,
in
for
one
sure.
area of their life, and then when you're hanging out with them outside the church the next, you gotta be the same person that they're still looking up to, because if you show them 2 different people, when the moment comes down the road where they have a fork in the road, is which path do you choose? They will choose the one that they want to and say, well, yes, this is what he keeps telling me, but I've also been around him here, and this is kind of what I want to do. And
Yeah.
I can get away with it by saying he did it,
Yeah,
and he's also my leader. now.
absolutely.
So,
That's a great one, is being the same person in both sides, not, you're not two-faced or hypocritical. I've been a part of teams before where we had to remove leadership, this was years ago, but someone was a worship leader in a youth ministry on Wednesday night on the stage, leading and setting example, but then during the week they're out drinking excessively at the local restaurants, and like students are coming back and saying, hey, I watched them pound like 6 beers at a restaurant. And it's like, that's a problem. Like, I'm not here to say that alcohol's of the devil. I don't feel like that's the case. Like, we don't believe that at East Coast. But you need to set an example. And you don't need to be out there, especially when you're like barely older than some of these kids, and abusing things like that. Like, the Bible says, avoid the appearance of evil. And so it's very important, that example that you set. because we've thought about this for alcohol, and I'm not going to touch on alcohol fully right here. But if you have someone who's truly dealing with an issue, and maybe their alcohol turns to violence or excess, and now they see Pastor Dan, who Pastor Dan drinks zero because he was a legit alcoholic and drug addict. So he has a zero tolerance for his life personally. But they see him out having a glass of wine, but they're like, well, if he does it, now I can do it, but they take it to excess. The next thing, they're blacking out or they're beating their wife, is they'll use it as a justification. So that's another example similar to what you're saying, Chris, is that people are going to do what they see. Is it's going to follow that more than just what they hear you say.
Well, another one of those is I'm teaching my kids how to drive,
Yeah.
and so
My kids rat me out. Why are you texting right now, Dad?
yeah. So
Good for them.
you know they're watching like what I do all the time.
Yes.
And then as I start teaching them, I'm like, look, you have to give them I have a lot more experience.
I know.
You can't do the same.
I can drive on my knee.
Yeah, you can't. So my oldest is 20, and I have this app that kind of follows everybody.
Yeah,
family.
Life 360 years.
Yeah, and it shows me the top speed, and I'm like, I had to talk to him the other day. I was like, hey son, just want to let you know, your speed is getting excessive.
Yeah.
You know, I'm like, your top speed was 88 miles per hour. I'm like, if you want to continue to be under our insurance, okay, you might want to tone it down, because if you get a ticket, then insurance rates start going up, and I'm gonna have to release you, and you go on your own, and you know that's gonna cost you a lot more money.
A lot more.
Just trying to, and he mentioned the comment, and he was like, well, I mean, you know, you go pretty fast yourself, and I was like, hold on,
Yeah.
hold on, because they do want to throw that back,
Oh, yeah.
back at you, and so I had to explain a few things against him so you can understand a little bit better.
Yep.
But they're always watching.
Oh, yeah.
You know, and you're setting that example. Even my youngest one is 14, and she's like, hey, next year I get to drive, and she's like all watching me, so I have to really focus and say, okay, and safety first.
Yeah.
You know, and as I get older.
You raise your game because of it.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
You have to.
Oh, yeah.
So, you know, being leaders in our household, you know, sometimes we lose sight of that, but our kids are always watching.
Yep.
And then they'll do that.
That's a good word. Definitely. Did I see a hand over here? Yeah. Yeah, Sawyer.
My thoughts go to like a process in a workplace. Like
Yeah.
it's not always the case that you'll be trained like if you're a new person by like the top guy.
Yeah.
It always feels like special when that happens. But even if you see somebody who you know could make the excuse like, okay, I know how to do this. I don't need to look at the recipe, or I don't need to like do this process quite. You know, I can kind of
The SOP. Yeah,
work 'cause I know,
instructions.
'cause, you know, I know this will get by. Like watching them show you the process and really be like showing you step by step, like this is the proper way to do it, and this is how we do it. And obviously that's like could be a first impression, but if you have to see that, you know, if you see them later on, and you know they're just like tossing stuff around, you know, like whatever, and not
Cutting corners.
yeah, cutting
Yeah.
corners and not doing the right thing, that can be, you know, like, oh, you know, once I do it for a little bit and get good, I can start cutting corners like that. But it's like, it's really impactful to see, you know, when they don't think anyone's looking, or if they come in and you know they've had like a hard day,
Yeah.
or you know they're in a rush, that like, you know, no, I'm still gonna do it the way we're supposed to do it because this is how it gets done right, and you know,
Yeah.
I can compromise on that, and it's like.
It's good. Yeah, it does. Yeah, the consistency is very reassuring to people.
Yeah.
Even if they don't realize it, it's like it gives you peace. That you're like, you know who they are. And that's something that I've had kind words spoken over me. Like one of the words that was spoken over me my last birthday, which the most, it says that I'm super intentional, which I like. And that's a good word and I appreciated it. But one of the things that I would love to have, and Pastor Brian probably gets this honor more than anybody I know, is super consistent, high character, high integrity, high honor. Like that's like one of his biggest things. And it's good because he's in charge of finances, like, and he's in charge of HR, and like he's a great guy to have, but you just know that the level's right there always, like no compromise. It's always really good. But that's something that I realized. I was like, I want that to be something that someone says is that I don't want my kids to rat me out and be like, Dad was, and they could pick on me for, we couldn't find the movie on Netflix, so he knew somewhere else we could stream it. And it's like, they're like, why are you streaming it somewhere else? And I'm not even, this is a Batman movie or something. But they're like, is that a right site, Dad? And someone knows where to find it, some movie streaming site. But it's like, I don't want to do that. Like, we pay for streaming services, and if it's not there, then they've seen me do it. Let's muscle up and go pay $4 to rent it from Amazon because we got to watch it that bad. And it's like, oh, that's painful. But I know, I see you over there grimacing. It's like $4 to rent this movie, but I've done it as a principle so they would see it.
It's your integrity.
Because I don't want them to follow, because the reality is if they try to go find some streaming site, they may not find the right one. And now there's raunch on there. And now I've opened up a door for them that I'm like, man, I know how to find the right one, and I got the good pop-ups, and I know how to protect myself. But they try to follow my example, and now it's out, and my integrity is gone. They're like, well, you're cutting corners.
At the end of the day,
For $4.
$4.
I would give $4 to protect their eyes from
Yeah,
potential
yeah,
porn or
yeah.
whatever it is.
Yeah.
Yeah, Sherry.
And, I mean, old school, it's like, how easy do we used to burn CDs?
Oh, yeah.
Music and stuff.
Oh, man, piracy was crazy.
And, I mean, now they do still do it with music, but.
Oh, yeah, they're finding new ways. It's not as common now, but there's other things. But, yeah, for those who remember, LimeWire and BearShare and all the other peer-to-peer, is so easy to, download every song you'd ever want forever. Like, why pay for it when you could get it? But,
Yeah, because those
you know.
people make lots of money anyway, they don't need that little
Yeah.
money that I.
But it's something that starts to break down in you. So it's the right thing to do. Well, let's take another break. I went late. It's 9:03. Let's come back in 10 minutes and we'll finish up our last session. I am going to go.